Good afternoon to you. 406 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up at the top of the hour, Steve Moore will be with us with the new report showing just how different the lives are of the leftist elites versus everybody else. Interesting survey, actually. Steve helps us dig through the data. Then Kash Patel will be here at 5:30. We'll talk to him about Nancy Pelosi's January 6th committee deleting a ton of the evidence of their activities. New questions about why. Kash joins us at 5:30 to discuss. And you can talk to us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. We have breaking news this afternoon that the United States Supreme Court has, for the moment at least, sided with Joe Biden and says that the Biden administration can continue to destroy Texas-installed border barriers to allow illegal immigrants to pour into the country. There were just 4 justices dissenting today: Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, Neil Gorsuch, and Brett Kavanaugh. No opinion issued on any of this, unsigned, but signed, but no opinion added. The dissents were given without any explanation. The majority did not explain its reasoning either. For more on the breaking news and what's going on with our border, I want to bring in Lora Ries now, director of the Border Security and Immigration Center at the Heritage Foundation and a former acting DHS deputy chief of staff. Laura, great to have you back with us. Thank you.
Thanks, Vince, for having me on.
I mean, this is obviously a big fight between Texas and the federal government. I have to say, I'm not happy with this outcome. What do you make of it?
It is shocking. And to have anyone, middle America, anywhere in the country, watch border agents cut wire between ports of entry so that illegal aliens can enter, they too are shocked when they see it. And now we have the Biden administration fighting at every level of court to say, yes, please let us keep cutting Texas's wire so more illegal aliens can come in rather than enforce the laws. I mean, it just makes no sense. And this ruling just compounds that. Now it is temporary. Let's hope when it goes back to the lower courts to be decided on the merits, the ultimate ruling changes. States should not be left helpless when the federal government argues immigration's our job and then won't do their job.
Yeah, this is pretty blatant, and it's one of the many reasons it's upsetting is because you think our institutions are supposed to work on our behalf, and here you have a Supreme Court decision that is to the benefit of foreign nationals who are breaking our laws immediately when they enter the country.
Right. I've never seen an administration fight so hard to open the border and keep it open. I mean, let's recap. When Arizona put up shipping containers in gaps of their wall, the Biden administration sued Arizona and said, no, take those down. When Texas put river buoys in the middle of the river to prevent people from crossing illegally in a highly crossed area, Biden administration sued and said, take those down. And now we're in this fight, and the Biden administration wants to keep cutting the wire. It just defies logic. The administration would be more honest if they simply said, yes, we want an open border.
Yes, but they're not being honest about that. Let me begin with Joe Biden on Friday. Biden insisted on Friday. Well, actually, on Friday he claimed the border was not secure now, after previously his administration claimed that they had operational control. Take a listen.
That the border is secure, sir?
No, it's not. I haven't believed it for the last 10 years, but I've said it for the last 10 years. Give me the money.
Okay, so a little hard to hear. Biden says it hasn't been secure for the last 10 years, but he says, give me the money. In other words, he thinks that if only more federal tax dollars went to the border, then what? It would be closed?
Yeah, this is unfortunately, I guess, a benefit of having a president whose mind is a little bit foggy, is that sometimes he admits the truth. And he knows the border is not secure. He needs to check in with Secretary Mayorkas and his own press secretary to get their stories straight. But the comment about just give me the money, this is what his staff is telling them. They have burned through their money to pay off the NGOs or non-governmental organizations that carry out the open border operations for this administration. And the president and Secretary Mayorkas and the Colorado congressional delegation and the NGOs themselves are right now begging for more money because they've run out of it. It is very expensive to transport and shelter and feed and give social services and attorney services to millions of illegal aliens. So no surprise that they're out of money. And now is the time for the Senate to say no more, not another dollar to these NGOs and this open border operations.
There was a question today put to the White House. Why are Joe Biden and Alejandro Mayorkas saying such vastly different things about the state of our border? Here's how that went down.
On Friday, President Biden said that he does not believe the border is secure, which is different from what Secretary Mayorkas has testified multiple times on the Hill. Why do they have two different views of the security of the border?
I mean, look, the president's been really clear, right? He has been clear that we need to move on the border. The border he needs resources to deal with the situation at the border. That's why they're having these conversations at the Senate, on the Senate level, and that's why he's asking for more resources.
Okay, so this goes back to the same old line that you were just referencing, which is that all they want is more money, and that's just to process more illegals into the country.
That's right. And it really must be exhausting for his staff to always have to clean up after he admits the truth, despite their instruction and coaching.
Yes.
But yes, they simply want more money to keep this processing going. The Solicitor General kind of said as much when she was arguing before the Supreme Court justices and saying, no, Border Patrol needs access and they need to keep patrolling, apprehending, inspecting, and processing illegal aliens. But what they're doing is processing them into the U.S. Secretary Mayorkas admitted a couple weeks ago to his agents that they are releasing at least 85% of the illegal aliens that they are encountering. And the result is now we're looking at over 10.2 million illegal alien encounters and known gotaways. So Biden told the truth. His staff have to clean up for him. And the press, I'm sure, will continue to help out the administration.
Now, I want to bring it a little closer to home. Today, we have a report out of Fairfax County, Virginia, that a Honduran illegal immigrant who was charged with sexual abuse / carnal knowledge of a child in the state was just released by the Fairfax County jail without notice because ICE had sought to detain this criminal. They wanted to take him into custody. You had Fairfax County the Fairfax County jail refused to tell ICE when they were releasing this guy. So an ICE agent had to go to the home to make the arrest and was subsequently injured by the criminal, by the illegal alien criminal in the midst of taking him into custody. Why is this happening? Why is it you've got members of ICE, which is still the Biden administration, saying, please help us deport these people, and Democrats refusing to work with them?
Yes, unfortunately, there's too many sanctuary jurisdictions around the country, be it cities or states, that will simply not keep an illegal alien detained. And they don't want to cooperate with ICE or with Customs and Border Protection. They won't share information, and they won't turn them over to ICE custody to prevent additional crimes against the community. They simply want more illegal aliens out on the street. It defies logic. But this demonstrates what most the important public safety issue of dealing with sanctuary jurisdictions. It is always safer for the ICE agent to take a criminal alien into custody from state or local law enforcement, not go into the alien's community, into the house where the agents can be harmed, as was the case in this situation. Other people in the home can be harmed, other people in the community. And so when sanctuary jurisdictions claim, oh, it's safer, we want people to come forward and talk to the police and be able to give criminal information and not be exposed, they are not weighing this real danger when criminal aliens are released back into the community. And we know, particularly with these sex crimes, the recidivism rate is quite high.
Yes, it's a total scam, too. If the whole idea is that the government keeps on releasing dangerous criminals back into the community in which you live, it creates a culture of fear, not a culture of cooperation with the government.
Exactly. It's the very migrant community that these sanctuary jurisdiction leaders claim they want to protect that they are endangering by releasing criminal aliens back into those very communities.
Well, Laura, it also, to me, it's also a giveaway as to what these Democrat mayors are really up to. Because if you listen to the New York City mayor or the Chicago mayor, they'll make a lot of complaints about the current inflow of illegal immigrants into their cities. But all they ask for is a lot more money. I don't hear them even for a moment pause to consider getting rid of their sanctuary city status.
That's exactly right. It is about the money. It is a grift at this point. They don't change their sanctuary policies. They don't tell the Biden administration to secure the border. They just say, feds, give us more money, which, again, like the NGOs that have burned through their money, that's why Biden and Mayorkas and others are begging Congress for billion more dollars right now in the supplemental to pay off these cities and to keep these mayors quiet. They're going to have a heck of a time in 2024, an election year, particularly in Chicago, where the Democratic convention is, and they are facing so many illegal aliens residing there.
Laura, finally, on the policy front, when you hear these news reports that Republicans and Democrats are inching closer to some sort of immigration deal, what are you on guard for?
Well, it's two parts. One is the underlying money that the Biden administration wants. Again, $13.6 billion, right, much of which go to the NGOs to keep this facilitation of mass migration going. And so the senators seem to be fine with that. They're not even debating that. I mean, that alone should be a no vote. On top of that, they're trying to put some policy changes, but what they really would do is codify Biden's tools that he's using to keep the border open, like more mass parole, faster work authorization. I mean, that's the main reason so many illegal aliens come here is for work authorization. If you give them a work card faster, that's just going to keep the flow going. Allowing up to 5,000 illegal aliens a day before CBP can use an expulsion authority and push people back across the border, then we're allowing and accepting crisis levels of illegal immigration per day. So this should be a no vote, again, just on the money, but certainly on the policy changes that we're hearing about. Unfortunately, they're not releasing the text yet.
Yes.
That would just codify the problem.
So, in other words, what you just described as a human trafficking bill, we would impose new ways for more human trafficking at federal taxpayer expense.
That's right. And we're also hearing that an additional benefit would be taxpayer-funded civil deportation attorneys for minors and for other vulnerable aliens. And this is something that violates the immigration law, which says you can have an attorney if you're in deportation proceedings, but at no expense to the government. And the left has been trying to chip away at that for decades. And this could be a provision in this negotiation that we're hearing about. We'll have to see, but that alone would be a fiscal bottomless pit.
Lora Ries, over at the Heritage Foundation and former acting DHS Deputy Chief of Staff, thank you very much for your time. Thank you, Laura. Some wild exchanges with Coringe at the White House today on the border coming up, including mixing it up with Peter Doocy and my Daily Caller colleague, Reagan Reese. Before we get there, I've got Alan and Gambrels calling in. Line 2. Alan, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show. Alan. Is Alan on the phone? This is the sound of silence. I don't hear anything else. All right, Alan. Sorry, brother. Couldn't get you today. Let's get to Glenn, who's calling in now from Frederick on line 3. Glenn, good afternoon.
Hi, Vince. Since this senile president we have in the White House now can ignore Supreme Court rulings, just like he did last week with the student loan, $5 billion, relief, the state of Texas should do the same thing. Just ignore this ruling by the Supreme Court and continue doing what they're doing with the border.
Yeah, so what I'm trying to I agree with you on principle. I just wonder what this looks like in practice, because what's going to happen here is the feds are going to order the Border Patrol, hey, cut through the concertina wire again. Wherever it pops up, cut through it to allow more foreign nationals to come in. So what that would probably provoke under normal circumstances is like a standoff between law enforcement in Texas and the federal government, because ignoring the court here means, I don't know, it means like keep on putting concertina wire up, which is Texas is doing anyway. I think they're just going to keep doing that, Glenn, so that they're kind of following your advice. The question becomes, what do you do about the feds who keep cutting through it?
I don't know, but I would keep doing it.
Yeah, keep on keeping on. Thanks, Glenn. Yeah, they're trying this in Texas, and they're doing what they can. You know, that park, that 2.5 miles there in Eagle Pass, Texas, that they've taken over, I don't imagine much is going to change about that park, even with the Supreme Court saying that, yeah, well, the feds can keep cutting through the concertina wire. Well, sure, but in that park where they've put up a lot of concertina wire, if an illegal gets in there, they're being arrested by the Texas law enforcement. They're being taken into custody. And so I don't know if much is going to change in that 2.5 mile stretch. Now, you've got a lot more mileage to deal with than just 2.5 miles, but it'll be interesting to see what kind of standoffs happen there. Border Patrol is not allowed in the park other than to access the boat ramp. Will they cut through the wire on the water side? Are they going to be floating in the Rio Grande and moving up to the wire to cut it open? These Border Patrol agents don't want to do this, I should point out. They're following the orders that they're being given by the Department of Homeland Security, but they are not interested in cutting through. We just talked to Brandon Judd about a week ago or so with the Border Patrol Union. He said these guys are following orders, but boy, they are cheering on. The Border Patrol agents are cheering on Texas for trying to secure the border here. Chris is in Gainesville, line 4. Chris, you're on the Vince Colonnade Show.
I tell you, hi, Vince. Listen, when it comes to stuff like this, immigration, conservatives are absolutely pathetic. They have no fight in them at all. They won't protest, march, or boycott. I would oppose any federal judge who issued a ruling like this on immigration. I would just defy the order, like the previous caller said.
Mm-hmm.
And we need a presidential candidate who promises to bring to zero two things. And I'm not voting again until those two things are done. Zero illegal immigration and zero homelessness. And all federal judges who interfere with cleaning up homelessness and stopping illegal immigration should be impeached and removed. In fact, they should be prevented on just those two things from making any rulings. It should be only in the hands of the politicians who answer to the people. Because we're getting nowhere. The Heritage Foundation and FAIR have been around forever. I get solicitations from them. They do absolutely nothing. They get nowhere. And we're talking decades. And it's time for a new revolution. You know, it's a good thing conservatives weren't around during the American Revolution because we'd still be living under the British crown. You think those revolutionaries who killed the British, you think they were polite? You know, people, the Republicans are polite. Yeah, that's the problem.
Well, rolling over is not the message from the American Revolution. I agree with you there. There has to be a fight to hold on to this great country. Chris, thank you very much for the call. Hang on. I've got more ahead for you, including the White House, which has basically decided to get rid of our borders. And without those, you don't exactly have a country. Well, good afternoon to you. 4:36 here at News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Steve Moore will be with us at 5 o'clock. We'll talk about a new survey that he's got the information on. And, you know, why the leftist elites are living such different lives, and why that leads to so many of the discrepancies between what they think is good versus what the rest of us do. And Kash Patel is here at 5:30. We'll talk about the January 6th committee destroying a whole bunch of the evidence of their own misdeeds. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Still processing this news here that the Supreme Court has given the Biden administration the all clear to destroy Texas's border barriers while the case continues to be litigated, right? So it's working its way through the Fifth Circuit in the southern United States. That it covers Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. And they had issued an injunction against the federal government and said, you can't cut through these barriers. You cannot destroy the concertina wire and the buoys, all this stuff. You can't be doing that while the case is being litigated, while it's working its way through the court. And the Supreme Court said, actually, the feds can keep destroying everything as the court considers this on the merits, which is a disaster, a total disaster. And I pulled up the actual order from the United States Supreme Court today, and it's very short. There's not much to it at all. I can read the whole thing to you in a moment. Here's what it says. the application to vacate injunction presented to Justice Alito and by him referred to the court is granted. The December 19th, 2023 order of the United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit, case number 23-50869, is vacated. Justice Thomas, Justice Alito, Justice Gorsuch, and Justice Kavanaugh would deny the application to vacate injunction. End quote. That's it. That's the whole thing. Now, let me emphasize something about this. The majority on the court, that does not include Thomas, Alito, Gorsuch, or Kavanaugh. They were on the right side of this, on the decent side of this, on the let's protect the country as much as we can here side of this. The rest of them didn't feel like they needed to stop for even a moment to explain in writing why they were adopting this position. Justice Roberts, Justice Amy Coney Barrett, the lefty justices, none of them paused for a moment to say, okay, well, apparently, to actually write something down to convey to us what led them to this rationale. What was the guiding principle here? Maybe there's a good explanation for this. Maybe there's some principle within the law and the Constitution that would dictate that they would come to this conclusion. But they didn't even bother explaining it. Instead, they said, go ahead, destroy the border. So that's an infuriating feature of this. I notice a bunch of conservatives right now pointing out the following, especially about Amy Coney Barrett. Hey, we busted our tails to get you into place. This is the thanks we get. And look, of course, the justices are not supposed to be vehicles for politics. That's not the point of a Supreme Court justice, although, of course, to the left it is. Even today, Coringe was claiming that the Supreme Court passes laws. She has no idea what she's talking about as it relates to abortion. They're calling for more abortions in the country today. There's a big celebration today for the left, the anniversary of Roe v. Wade, and they want more bodies for the death cult. And so they were arguing for that today, and they were like, well, the court and the law. And no, it wasn't a law, dummy. It was a decision 51 years ago. And it was a bad decision. It made up a constitutional right to kill children, and it didn't exist, they said. So here is a short little burp. It's practically a tweet. It definitely fits within a tweet from the United States Supreme Court, but no further rationale offered. Nothing. They don't apparently think that you even need an explanation. Meanwhile, I definitely feel like I do. So what should Texas do about this, do you think? A couple calls already say that Texas should defy this. Now, I'm just going over this in my head. How does that work in practice? Defying it here means setting up concertina wire. Yes, so they're already doing that. They were doing that in the first place. They've kept doing it now, and I assume they will keep doing it going forward. So nothing changes there. It's not really defying the order. Should Texas arrest Border Patrol agents? Should a Border Patrol agent be put in handcuffs, perhaps on camera, by a state law enforcement officer in order to prevent the destruction of the southern border? Boy, that would bring a lot of attention to the issue, wouldn't it? You have a cop arresting a federal law enforcement officer who's being told they have to destroy the border. Now, Texas's case is, hey, it's in the Constitution. We can repel an invasion. The federal government's not doing it, so we're going to. Could something good come from a standoff like that? It's just awful what's happening. We've got millions of people pouring into the country. Of course, and aided and abetted by the Biden administration. You won't hear a single Democrat use the word invasion, but what number would you need? What number? How many millions would you need to say it's an invasion? I'm serious about that, by the way. The whole planet is coming in. And we're not stopping it. We're aiding it. Biden and company have set up an app for people to more easily get into the United States. That's what they're interested in doing. The CBP One app they use to pour into the country. And then how many of these stories do we need where an illegal immigrant comes into the United States, commits a heinous crime, is taken into custody by local authorities in a Democrat district, And then when Immigration and Customs Enforcement sort of just reaches out and says, look, we know you have this person in custody. Please give them to us. Please, please, please. And then even these local Democrats are like, no, we're not going to work with ICE. We're not going to work with ICE to get rid of this person. We're going to send them back into the community. That's what happened in Fairfax County. This is the story today, where you have a pedophile in Fairfax County, a Honduran illegal immigrant, Bill Malusian summarizing today, a Honduran illegal immigrant charged with sexual abuse and carnal knowledge of a child in Virginia was released from Fairfax County Jail without notice after the sanctuary jurisdiction ignored ICE's detainer request. He then assaulted an ICE agent when they found and rearrested him at his residence in Springfield, Virginia, ICE says. Quote, Fairfax County refused to honor the ICE detainer lodged against this Honduran non-citizen, said acting ICE Deputy Field Office Director, Eric Weiss. Quote, when ICE detainers are ignored by local authorities, the public is put at risk. Unfortunately, this time the result was the unnecessary injury of a federal law enforcement officer while prosecuting the arrest of a non-citizen charged with sexually abusing a Virginia minor. That makes him a molester, a pedophile, and producing child sexual abuse material. So that's about as vile as it gets, isn't it? And instead of working with ICE and saying, okay, let's get this guy out of our country, Fairfax County said, no, let's release him. This is what a comic book villain would do. This is what the Joker would do in the Batman comics. They would open Arkham Asylum, release the crazies, destroy Gotham. Tom Homan, who previously worked in immigration, of course, for the Trump administration, says this today. Fairfax County Sheriff Stacey Ann Kincaid was a career law enforcement officer. She obviously forgot the rule of having your six, protecting your back. Releasing criminal illegal aliens to the streets and not honoring an ICE detainer puts the public and law enforcement at unnecessary danger. Shame on her. Sanctuary cities are sanctuaries for criminals. Full stop, says Tom Homan. And he's right about that. Is it helping anybody? Is it empathetic? Does it make a community safer? Does it make it more generous? Does it bring the community together? No, it does the exact opposite of all of those things. It makes it more dangerous, including areas in which you have high concentrations of illegal immigrants. That's the other thing. So if the idea is like, oh, we don't want a bunch of people to be deported, well, the logic of this makes no sense. You're going to release dangerous illegals back into communities of other illegals who are here, and to only make their communities more dangerous, more fearful, less likely to report to the police for fear of the consequences. That's lunacy. That's what you do if you are actually trying to destroy the country. That's what you do if you want to tear it apart. So here today in the White House, Peter Doocy asks Haringe about all of this.
Authorities in Fairfax County, Virginia, ignored an ICE detainer. They released an illegal immigrant from Honduras who was charged with sexually assaulting a Virginia minor and production of sexual abuse material. Doesn't that go to show that as record numbers of people appear at the border, you guys have no idea what kind of people are coming into this country?
Let me just say, first of all, this is why the president is having negotiations with the Senate, senators, Republicans, and Democrats.
This is why?
Right, for the past couple of weeks to deal with what's going on with the border security.
Where are the words? Can you spare like 5 sentences for Fairfax County and the horrific decision-making involved in releasing criminals back into the community?
Right, as it relates to border security. This is why the president, on day one...
This is why we want more money.
...put forward a comprehensive immigration plan that more than 3 years now, Congress didn't do anything about. But he's appreciative that we're having this conversation in the Senate.
Not a very good one.
We've deployed additional troops and federal agents to the border who have, by the way, returned more than 482,000 individuals since May. That's what we've been able to do. We've led the largest expansion of lawful pathways, and that we haven't seen in some time.
We've led the largest expansion of allowing foreign nationals to come into the United States. She's bragging about that.
And continues to have diplomatic conversation with Mexico, who have actually taken actions to deal with the situation. There's more work to do. There's more work to do. We understand that. We have said that. You've heard that from the president on Friday. We understand that there's more work to do.
Oh, shut up. Okay, let me go to the phones now. I've got Sam in Alexandria, line 6. Sam, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, thanks, Vince, for taking my call. My gosh, I was going to talk about what I think, particularly the labor union president that has been on your show a couple of times for border protection and CBP.
Yeah.
It's come to the point to where he just needs to call for a sick out and just say, no, sorry, nobody's coming to work today. Imagine 8,000 officers that just don't show up at the border, and allow it to be what it is, and see if that doesn't get news attention. But
so let me just pause for a moment on that, Sam. This is an interesting idea for a number of reasons. One of them is that the Border Patrol is not technically, by and large, on the border anyway, so that wouldn't be much of a change in status. If you were having a sick out, you'd be not at the processing centers. You'd be not helping to bring more illegals into the country. And based on everything we're hearing from the Border Patrol, that is exactly what they are against. And so you may be right. There may be something here for these Border Patrol agents to do if they can do it in a unified way.
Oh, absolutely. And who better than the labor union president to call for that and just make it a very, plant the flag and say, here's where we stand. We're done with this. We have we swore to the Constitution,
right, and
we will no longer abide with unlawful orders. What I originally called him was about when we were talking about, would Texas law enforcement arrest federal officers? They could probably hit them with, and it's kind of laughable, destruction of state property when you cut concertina that the state purchased.
Yes,
but all of this is just shadowed by this horrendous act that, and Corinne's talking about this illegal alien that did these perverse acts with this child, and that they haven't. This could have been handled if they would have passed the bill. Well, hold on, you're not addressing that the dude would have still been here. He would have still been let out of jail.
Exactly.
And back on the streets. And I don't understand local municipalities that, can't draw the line and say, you know what, we are going to be sanctuary except for child sex crimes, except for rape, except for murder. Are you freaking kidding?
I know.
That is such an easy, distinct line.
It's also untethered. It's also untethered from common sense, which is the world you obviously still occupy, Sam. I appreciate the call as always, sir. It's excellent points all around. Let me go to Gary in Silver Spring. Gary's on line 2. Gary, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Good afternoon, Vince. It's a simple idea. You have the U.S. border. You just have Texas cede, say, 150 yards of it to the U.S., and then after that you put the Texas state border. And at that point, it's no longer crossing into Texas from the U.S.-Mexico border, but you've crossed the U.S. border, and now you're crossing into the Texas border. That way it's like, you can have that. Right here, this is where Texas starts.
Yeah, wherever that's feasible. I mean, if that's a workable thing, I'm all for it. Whatever Texas can do to stop the invasion, I'm all for it. So if it takes being creative, it takes, if there's like some aspect of the law that says, well, the feds are only in charge of the first 100 feet, 100 yards. After that, it's the state's responsibility. Great, I'm all for it. Gary, thank you. I really hope that Texas is thinking through all of these things. Also, I do look at what Texas is doing now, and I'm thinking, man, it's so great that they're doing it now. But I hate to be that guy, but why weren't you doing this before? Why weren't you doing this so long ago? I'm glad you're here now. It's to our benefit. All right. All right, let's see here. I've got a bunch of calls coming in on this subject. Let us go to Chris in Marshall, line 6. Chris.
Good afternoon, sir. Always an honor. I hope I'm coming through clearly. I'm actually out west of Middleburg right now, and that's notorious for bad cell coverage. But
you sound great.
Thank you, sir. I've got 2 totally separate ideas for the border. I got a carrot and I got a stick.
Hit them.
And the stick is, if you're playing music too loud in your house and you're disturbing your neighbors, it's not the neighbor's job to close their windows. It's your job to contain the problem. So the stick is, we go to Mexico and we say, We're annexing 200 yards into your territory, and we're putting up a wall. If you don't like it, go to war with us. We're going to put up a wall. We're not going to eminent domain American citizens' property. It's your problem. We're going to stop it in your country. Mm-hmm. The carrot, the other option, the other idea is, listen, Mexico, how would you like to be a global world leader? How would you like to soar with your middle class? Give us sovereignty over the border between Belize and Guatemala. We'll put a wall there, kind of like we run Panama or did. We're gonna manage that border, and we're gonna stop the flow north into Mexico, and we're gonna work in conjunction, and we're gonna make you guys a vacation destination. We're gonna make your cartels obsolete. Work with us.
I will say that we may not need to go even that far, Chris. If we go back to just the Trump era, threatening to hurt Mexico with a trade war was enough to get them to start locking down their southern border. Remember, Trump said he would get Mexico to pay for the wall, and at one point, he did have them locking down the people flowing north. It can be done if there's a will to do it, and you don't have an administration in charge that's literally trying to do the opposite to help the invasion along, which is what we have right now. All right. Hang on. Ahead, Steve Moore, Kash Patel, a lot more on the Vince Coglianese Show.